Ethan slowly opened his eyes, the soft hum of the medical station filling his ears. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and something unfamiliar, a delicate, sweet aroma he couldn't place. His body ached all over, a dull reminder of the accident that had brought him here. He blinked against the soft, bluish light, trying to make sense of his surroundings. Machines beeped rhythmically, tracking his heartbeat and breathing, their steady sounds oddly comforting. "Ah, you're awake," a soft, melodic voice said. Ethan turned his head and saw her. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered faintly blue, smooth and luminous under the lights. Her silver eyes reflected a gentle intelligence, and her hair seemed to float slightly around her shoulders, almost as if it were weightless. She wore a uniform of soft white with subtle aqua patterns that marked her as a medical professional. "Hi," Ethan croaked, his throat dry. "Where am I?" "You're safe," she said, her voice calm, flowing like a quiet river. "This is the Nerai medical station on the planet Kalira. You were injured in the mining accident. I'm Lyra, your assigned nurse." Ethan tried to sit up, wincing as pain lanced through his side. Lyra moved swiftly, placing a hand on his shoulder to guide him back down. "No sudden movements. You need to rest. Your injuries are significant, but nothing I can't manage," she said, her tone both professional and kind. Despite the discomfort, Ethan felt an unexpected sense of calm. There was something about Lyra that made him trust her instantly. Maybe it was the softness in her voice or the way her eyes seemed to focus entirely on him, giving him a sense that he mattered in that moment. I don't understand," he said slowly.
Mining accident? How?
"How did I get here?" "You were transported via the emergency shuttle," Lyra explained, checking his vitals. "The planetary network detected the collapse and brought you here immediately. The station is equipped for human treatment, though your physiology is slightly different from Nerai patients." Ethan nodded, trying to absorb the information. He had been a mining engineer on the fringe of human colonies used to danger, but the thought of being in the care of an alien species still made him uneasy. Yet looking at Lyra, he felt oddly reassured. Her hands moved with precision as she adjusted the monitors, her presence calm and deliberate. "Will I be okay?" he asked. "You will recover," she said firmly. "But you must follow instructions. Rest, hydration, and trust the process." Over the next few days, Ethan's recovery began in earnest. Lyra administered treatments, monitored his vitals, and even made the bland hospital food more palatable by adjusting temperatures and textures, a small gesture that showed her attentiveness. They spoke in quiet moments, Ethan telling her about Earth, mining operations, and human culture, while Lyra shared carefully chosen details about Nerai society, the oceans of Kalira, and the delicate way her species viewed life. Despite the distance between their worlds, a bond started to form. Ethan found himself laughing at her dry humor, marveling at her knowledge and enjoying her presence in a way he hadn't anticipated. He had known humans who were warm and kind, but Lyra's care felt deeper, somehow more complete. One evening, as Ethan sat by the observation window watching the twin moons of Kalira rise, he noticed something strange. Lyra appeared unusually tense, her movements stiff as she adjusted his bandages. She avoided the window, standing with her back to the light as if it made her uncomfortable. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked cautiously. She hesitated, then forced a smile. "Yes, just sensitive to the light today." "Nothing to worry about," Ethan frowned. This was different from the calm, composed nurse he had come to know. Something was off. The next morning, he noticed more unusual behavior. Lyra's temperature readings were slightly higher than normal, and she seemed distracted, her normally fluid movements interrupted by small pauses as if she were struggling with herself. When he asked, she brushed it off with a soft laugh, but Ethan could see the tension behind her eyes. He wanted to understand, but she was clearly trying to protect him. Every alien species had customs humans did not understand, and he suspected this might be one of those situations. Yet curiosity mixed with concern gnawed at him. As days passed, the medical staff around Lyra began to behave differently as well. They maintained distance, whispering among themselves in a language Ethan couldn't follow. It was clear something significant was happening, but the station's calm, orderly environment masked it. Only Lyra's subtle discomfort gave it away. One afternoon, he returned from a brief stroll around the station's garden domes to find her outside his room, pacing. She looked startled when she saw him. "Ethan, you shouldn't be here," she said quickly, a flush rising to her cheeks. I'm worried about you, he replied simply. Something's wrong. I can see it, she bit her lip, conflicted. Humans, you don't understand. This is private. It's something Narai experience alone. Ethan took a careful step closer. Then let me help. Maybe I don't understand fully, but I can try. You don't have to face it alone. Her eyes flickered with an emotion he couldn't name. Relief, fear, something deeper. After a tense pause, she nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Just stay calm, please. Over the next hours, Ethan observed what he could without intruding. Lyra began to engage with the station's environmental regulators, small orbs that glowed faintly and seemed to stabilize her surroundings. Her breathing was uneven, her skin more luminous than usual. At one point, she whispered in her own language, a soft string of notes that sounded almost musical, as though trying to soothe herself. Ethan realized this was serious. Whatever was happening, it wasn't illness in the human sense. It was biological, emotional, something integral to her species, and it was clear she needed both privacy and support. He decided to remain near, quietly offering conversation and gentle humor, respecting her boundaries but ensuring she wasn't completely alone. He told her stories of Earth, simple, calming narratives about forests, oceans, and stars, anything to ground her in something familiar. Gradually, he noticed her tense movements ease, her voice regain its melodic calm, even if she was still visibly uncomfortable. One evening, after several days of this careful routine, she sat near him by the observation window, gazing out at the moons. She didn't speak at first, just allowed her presence to be near his. Then in a small voice she said, "You are different, Ethan. Humans do not usually understand Narai in this way." "I'm just trying," he said softly. "I don't fully understand, but I care. That's all I can do." She nodded, eyes glistening with something that looked very close to gratitude. "It is enough. More than enough, perhaps." For the first time since his arrival, Ethan felt the tension of the past days begin to lift. He didn't fully understand what this cycle meant or what it might demand of her, but he knew one thing clearly. His presence mattered. In some way, simple human kindness and attention were having a stabilizing effect, a soothing balm on something far more complex than he could imagine. As the twin moons rose higher, casting silvery light through the observation dome, Ethan realized that his stay on Calera had become more than a recovery period. It was becoming a lesson in patience, empathy, and the quiet strength of connection across worlds. And in the back of his mind, he knew that the days ahead would test both of them in ways he could not yet predict. But for now, in this shared quiet, he and Lyra simply existed together, human and Narai, each learning from the other, each finding comfort in the other's presence. The future was uncertain, but the first fragile threads of trust had begun to form, and in the vast alien world of Calera, that trust felt like a light strong enough to guide them both through whatever came next. The following morning, the station hummed with the usual activity, yet for Ethan, a quiet tension lingered in the air. Lyra was already at his bedside, moving with her usual grace, but there was a slight hesitation in her gestures. Something about her demeanor seemed different from the day before. Ethan noticed the subtle shift, the way her eyes darted away when he glanced at her, and the small tremble in her hands when she adjusted the monitors. "Good morning, Ethan," she said softly, her voice still melodic, but carrying a hint of strain. "How are you feeling today?" "Better," he replied, stretching cautiously. "But you seem tense. Are you sure everything is okay?" Lyra's eyes flickered and she swallowed. I'm fine, truly, just a little unwell. Nothing you need to worry about." Ethan didn't press further. He had learned by now that Lyra had her ways of handling matters, and pressing might only make things worse. Instead, he focused on getting dressed and eating the nutrient paste she had prepared for him. Even in the mundane routines of recovery, he found himself watching her carefully, noting every small change. By mid-morning, the station's doctor, an older Narai named Thalen, came by to check on Ethan. Thalen was imposing, tall with fins along his arms that shimmered in the light. His silver eyes scanned Ethan quickly before focusing on Lyra. "She is not well," Thalen said in a low, almost worried tone, looking past Ethan. "It is the cycle. She entered the mating season unexpectedly." Ethan froze, the words catching him off guard. "Mating season?" he repeated, trying to keep his voice steady. What? What does that mean? Thalen's expression softened. Neurocycles affect both body and mind. It is not harmful if managed correctly, but it changes their behavior and instincts. She will be sensitive. Emotionally, physically. It can be overwhelming. Ethan glanced at Lyra, who had averted her gaze. She looked small and uncertain, her usual composure replaced by something fragile and human-like in her expression. He felt a pang of concern. Is there anything I can do? He asked. Thalen shook his head. Not much, just remain calm and give her space, but do not leave her alone. Her species sometimes finds balance through trust and presence, that is rare, but humans sometimes provide it. Ethan nodded, determination settling in. He didn't fully understand, but he knew he couldn't abandon her. Whatever was happening, she needed someone she could trust, and he intended to be that person. The day progressed slowly. Lyra moved about her duties, assisting other patients, but she was distracted, her hands trembling slightly as she administered care. Ethan noticed the gentle glow of her skin becoming brighter at certain moments, a faint heat radiating from her body that he instinctively knew was not dangerous but unusual. He remembered Thalen's words and resisted the urge to ask more, instead offering quiet conversation and small gestures of reassurance. During one of the quiet afternoons, Ethan accompanied Lyra to the station's observation garden. The garden was a large dome-shaped area filled with alien plants that glowed faintly in soft blues and greens. Streams of clear water ran through the garden, and the scent of exotic flora filled the air. Lyra paused near a cluster of tall, wavy plants, her fingers brushing lightly across the leaves. I come here sometimes, she admitted softly. It calms me, helps me focus when the cycle begins. Ethan nodded. It's beautiful. I can see why it helps. He paused, then asked carefully, do you want to talk about what's happening? Lyra shook her head gently. It is personal. I do not usually discuss this with humans. It is difficult to explain. The cycle is instinctual and our emotions are heightened. Some behaviors cannot be understood without experience. He nodded again. I don't need to understand everything. I just want to help, in any way I can. For a moment she considered him with her silver eyes as if weighing whether to trust him further. Then she allowed herself to lean slightly closer. Your presence, it is like stabilizing. Humans are unusual in this way. Most species would react differently, perhaps with fear or misunderstanding. You do not. Ethan felt warmth in his chest. He had only hoped to be supportive, and yet Lyra's words carried a depth of gratitude and trust that he hadn't expected. Then I'll stay, he said simply. I won't leave you alone, not when you need someone. Her lips curved in a faint, appreciative smile. Thank you, Ethan. That means more than you realize. Over the next few hours, Ethan observed Lyra carefully. The glow of her skin seemed to fluctuate with her emotional state, and she occasionally whispered to herself in a soft, musical language. Ethan could sense the subtle changes, the shifts in her mood, and he adjusted his behavior to match. Calm, patient, gentle, and always present. At one point, she suddenly paused, her body trembling slightly. Ethan, she said, her voice barely audible. I must be alone for a short time. He hesitated. Are you sure? I can stay outside, just nearby. You don't have to do this alone. She shook her head, though a faint smile appeared. It is necessary. The cycle. It requires privacy at certain stages. But thank you. Your understanding is appreciated. Ethan nodded, stepping back to give her space while remaining close enough to respond if she needed him. He watched as she moved to the environmental regulators, glowing orbs scattered throughout the room, and began adjusting their positions, creating a subtle rhythm of light and temperature around her. The effect was mesmerizing. Her body seemed to sync with the orbs, and gradually the tremors eased, her breathing slowing. By evening, Lyra returned to him, her expression calmer, though still tinged with vulnerability. She sat beside him near the observation window, the twin moons casting silvery light across the room. You are patient, she said softly. It is unusual for humans. Most would not endure this. Waiting, uncertainty, and observation. Yet you do not withdraw. You remain, Ethan smiled. I'm just trying to help. That's all. No, she said quietly, her silver eyes meeting his. It is more than that. It is rare, and it is appreciated. For a moment, silence stretched between them, comfortable and gentle. Ethan felt a sense of connection he had never experienced before. Human and Narai, two species separated by worlds, yet sharing a fragile understanding built on trust and patience. Later, as he prepared for sleep, Ethan reflected on the day's events. Lyra's cycle had introduced complexity he had not anticipated, but it had also revealed something profound about empathy and connection. He realized that the most important aspect of care was not understanding every detail but simply being present, offering kindness and support without judgment. Meanwhile, Lyra remained in her room, adjusting the regulators and maintaining a delicate balance within herself. Her thoughts drifted to Ethan, and she considered the unusual comfort she felt in his presence. His calmness, his patience, and his willingness to stay despite uncertainty were qualities her species rarely encountered in others, especially humans. She recognized a rare trust forming, one that could bridge the distance between their worlds. As the station lights dimmed for the night, both Ethan and Lyra settled into their respective routines, aware of the subtle bond growing between them. Though the cycle continued and her instincts remained unpredictable, the presence of someone willing to remain by her side created a stabilizing effect she had not expected. And so, in the quiet hours of Kalira, two beings from different worlds learned the first lessons of understanding and empathy. One human offering steadfast presence, the other Narai, discovering that trust could flourish even in the midst of biological turmoil. Though neither could predict what the coming days would bring, the foundation had been laid, a fragile, luminous connection that might withstand the challenges ahead. The next morning dawned with soft light filtering through the observation dome, painting the room in gentle shades of blue and silver. Ethan woke feeling stronger than the day before. The aches from his injuries had lessened, and he could move more freely, though he still had to be cautious. As he stirred, he noticed Lyra already awake. Standing near the window, her gaze lost in the view of the twin moons rising over the distant oceans of Kalira. She looked tense, her posture rigid as though she were bracing herself against something invisible. Her silver eyes reflected the moon's light, and for a moment Ethan forgot about his own discomfort, caught in the silent beauty of her presence. "Good morning," he said softly, trying not to startle her. She turned, managing a small smile. "Good morning, Ethan. You sleep well?" "Yes," he said, "but you seem tired again. Are you managing?" Her eyes flickered downward. "I am trying." "The cycle, it is demanding." Ethan nodded. He had seen the subtle changes already, the shifts in her skin's glow, the quickening of her breathing, the occasional tremor when she tried to move too fast. It was clear this stage of her cycle required more attention and patience. He moved closer, careful not to crowd her. "I'll help. Just tell me what you need." For a long moment she studied him. Then, almost imperceptibly, she relaxed, allowing herself to accept his presence. "Your willingness. It is unusual. Humans, you are different. It is difficult to explain, but it helps." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. He had never expected to hear such words from an alien, yet he understood the meaning. She trusted him enough to let him be near during something so personal and overwhelming. The morning passed slowly. Lyra guided Ethan through light exercises to strengthen his recovering muscles, but her movements were careful, almost tentative. When she adjusted his limbs or helped him stretch, she flinched as if her own body were betraying her, reacting unpredictably. Ethan noticed her soft murmurs in her native tongue, low, melodic phrases that seemed to soothe her own agitation. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the intent. During the meal, Lyra prepared food for him with unusual care. Ethan watched her adjust the nutrient paste's temperature, stirring it in a pattern that seemed meditative. She glanced at him occasionally, her silver eyes full of unspoken emotions, a mixture of gratitude, embarrassment, and something deeper he couldn't name. As they ate in silence, Ethan considered the day ahead. The cycle's effect on Lyra was becoming more pronounced. She moved less fluidly than usual, her normally steady glow fluctuating with subtle peaks and valleys of light. He remembered Thalen's words about emotional synchronization and instinctual changes. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just physical. It was something far more profound. Later, Lyra suggested they visit the station's hydrotherapy wing. The large pools of warm, softly luminescent water were said to help regulate Narai physiology during cycles. Ethan watched as she moved gracefully toward the pool, but he noticed her hesitation. Her usually confident stride faltered as if she were unsure of herself. "Are you all right?" he asked. She paused, glancing at him with silver eyes that shone with vulnerability. "I need to be careful. The water. It helps, but it also amplifies the sensations. I must control myself." Ethan nodded. "I'll stay nearby. You won't be alone." For hours they worked together, Ethan offering quiet support as Lyra immersed herself in the water, letting its warmth soothe the turbulence within her. Occasionally she would flinch or pause, breathing deeply to regain control. Ethan learned quickly how to read her subtle cues, moving closer or giving her space as needed. His presence alone seemed to provide a grounding effect, a steadying force against the unpredictable currents of her biology. During a brief break, they sat on the pool's edge, the water reflecting the light of the twin moons and the glowing plants around the room. Lyra's hair clung slightly to her damp skin, and for a moment, she looked less like a nurse and more like someone fragile, in need of care herself. "You have patience," she said softly. "I did not expect this from a human. Most would leave afraid or confused, yet you remain. That means more than you know." Ethan shrugged, smiling. "I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone in this." A quiet silence settled between them, broken only by the soft lapping of water against the pool walls. Ethan noticed the way her breathing slowly evened out, the glow of her skin stabilizing as she relaxed slightly in his presence. It was a subtle victory, but one that felt significant to both of them. The day continued with gentle exercises, observation, and conversation. Lyra began to open up, sharing more about her species' customs and experiences. She explained how the Neri value emotional bonds above all else, how trust and empathy are considered sacred, and how their cycles are designed to strengthen connections with those they hold dear. Ethan listened carefully, fascinated. The more he learned, the more he realized how different their worlds were, and yet how universal the desire for connection could be. He marveled at the depth of Lyra's feelings, the complexity of her instincts, and the courage it took for her to endure such vulnerability in the presence of another being. In the late afternoon, a minor emergency arose in the station's infirmary. Another patient required immediate attention, and Lyra's role as head nurse meant she had to assist. Ethan offered to help, though his abilities were limited. Lyra hesitated but then accepted, recognizing his willingness to be involved. Together they managed the situation, with Ethan providing support and Lyra guiding him through procedures. Despite the stress, her glow remained relatively stable, a sign that her cycle was responding to the calming influence he provided. After the emergency, they returned to the observation garden. Ethan noticed Lyra's energy was waning, her movements slower and more deliberate. She leaned against the railing, gazing at the moons once again. "You are remarkable, Ethan," she said quietly. "Your presence, it has helped more than you realize. I did not expect a human to understand, yet you do in your own way." Ethan felt a swell of emotion. He had only intended to help, to provide support, yet he realized that his simple acts of patience and empathy were having a profound effect on someone from a completely different world. "I'm glad I can help," he said softly. For a long while they sat in silence, watching the moons rise higher in the sky. Lyra's breathing became even, her glow calming, and Ethan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He had not only recovered from his injuries, but had also become part of something rare and significant, a bridge of trust and understanding between human and Neri. As the night deepened, Lyra finally allowed herself to relax fully, leaning slightly against him in a gesture of quiet trust. Ethan, careful not to impose, offered a steadying presence, his hand near hers without touching, simply existing as a grounding point in the turbulence of her cycle. Before sleep, she spoke again, her voice soft and almost musical. "Humans, you are unusual. Your hearts, your minds, they carry strength I did not anticipate. You help me in ways words cannot describe." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm just here. That's all I can do." She nodded, her silver eyes reflecting both the light of the moons and the depth of her emotions. "It is enough. It is more than enough." In that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Caring, empathy, patience, these simple human qualities were powerful across worlds. They could calm storms, build trust, and create bonds that transcended species, culture, and instinct. As they settled into rest, both aware of the subtle bond growing between them, the station was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery and the distant sound of water flowing through the hydrotherapy pools. Outside, the twin moons of Kellera glimmered over the ocean, a silent witness to the connection forming between a human and an alien nurse navigating the challenges of biology, emotion, and trust. Ethan's thoughts drifted as he prepared for sleep. The cycle had brought complexity, yes, but also understanding. He realized that the next days would test both of them further. Yet he felt ready to face it, not with knowledge of every detail, but with patience, presence, and empathy. Lyra, in her own space, adjusted the environmental regulators and let her thoughts rest on Ethan's simple, yet unwavering support. She recognized the rare trust forming between them, an unusual connection that might endure beyond the immediate challenges of her cycle. She had faced many things in her life, but this was new, and it was comforting. And so, as Kellera's twin moons shone brightly in the night sky, human and Neri rested, each aware of the subtle but growing bond between them. One offered steady presence, the other fragile trust, and together they began a journey that would test, strengthen, and perhaps even change the way both viewed connection across worlds. The morning light spilled softly across the observation dome, painting the room in cool shades of blue and silver. Ethan woke with a quiet anticipation, feeling stronger and more steady than before. His injuries were improving and each movement caused less pain. Yet his attention was drawn immediately to Lyra, who was already awake, her silver eyes watching him with the calm precision he had grown to trust. "Good morning," Ethan said softly, smiling as he pushed himself upright. "Good morning." "Ethan?" Lyra replied, her voice carrying the familiar melodic tone. "You appear rested." "I feel better," he said. "And you? You look more at ease today. Are you feeling stable?" Lyra's gaze drifted toward the twin moons outside, then returned to him. "The cycle. It is continuing, but your presence, it aids me. It stabilizes my emotions in ways few others can." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. He had intended only to help, yet it was clear that his simple acts of kindness and calm were having a significant effect. "I'll stay," he said, "as long as you need me." For the next few hours they moved through the station's routines together. Ethan participated in light exercises to strengthen his recovering muscles, while Lyra guided him carefully, her movements graceful but deliberate. She occasionally flinched, a subtle tremor betraying her ongoing struggle to maintain balance. Ethan learned to watch her closely, noticing small cues, a shift in her glow, a subtle change in breathing that indicated when to step closer or give her space. Later, Lyra led Ethan to the station's observation gardens. The dome was filled with glowing flora and gentle streams of water, their soft light reflecting on her luminous blue skin. Ethan noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way she hesitated at the edge of the water pools, as though anticipating the heightened sensations the cycle brought. "Are you certain you want to do this?" he asked gently. "I must," she said softly. "It helps regulate the cycle. The water. It allows me to focus and regain balance, but it amplifies my sensitivity. I must proceed carefully." Ethan nodded. "I'll be here. You won't be alone." The hours in the hydrotherapy pools were a delicate dance of support and observation. Ethan remained close, never touching unless she indicated, simply offering calm presence. Lyra's silver eyes occasionally met his, and in those moments he felt a profound trust emanating from her. The subtle glow of her skin fluctuated with her emotions, the water reflecting light across the room, creating an almost magical atmosphere. During breaks, they sat together by the edge of the pool. Ethan noticed her hands trembling slightly as she touched the water, her normally confident demeanor tempered by vulnerability. "Ethan," she said softly, "your presence, it calms the turbulence within me. Most beings would react with fear, confusion, or distance. You remain. That is rare." Ethan shrugged, smiling faintly. "I'm just here. That's all I can do." "No," she said quietly. "It is more than that. It is meaningful." As the afternoon progressed, Lyra began to speak more openly. She shared stories of Neri customs, the importance of emotional bonds, and how her species viewed connection and trust. Ethan listened, fascinated. The complexity of her society, the depth of feeling, and the sacred nature of their bonds impressed him deeply. He realized that this was not merely a biological challenge for Lyra, it was also an emotional and cultural one. By evening, Ethan and Lyra returned to his quarters. The soft hum of the station and the gentle glow of the twin moons outside created a serene atmosphere. Lyra moved with less hesitation now, though the subtle fluctuations in her glow indicated the cycle's ongoing influence. "I am grateful for your patience," she said, her voice soft. "It has allowed me to maintain balance. Few beings could endure this without retreating." Ethan felt a swell of pride but also humility. He had not done anything extraordinary, only stayed by her side and offered kindness. Yet it was clear that these simple actions had a profound effect on someone from a species entirely alien to him. "I'm glad I could help," he said quietly. For a time they sat together in silence, watching the twin moons rise higher. Lyra's breathing became steady, her glow soft and even. Ethan realized that the trust between them had grown stronger, a rare and fragile bond forming across worlds. He understood that the cycle was far from over, but they had navigated its challenges so far with patience and understanding. Later that night, a minor alarm sounded in the medical bay. Another patient required attention, and Lyra, despite her ongoing cycle, went to assist. Ethan insisted on accompanying her, providing support where he could. The patient's situation was not severe, but it required precise care. Lyra guided him calmly, and together, they managed the situation without incident. Ethan observed her closely, noting how her confidence remained intact despite the cycle's strain. She was extraordinary, balancing her instincts, emotions, and professional duties with a strength that inspired him. He realized that this experience was teaching him more about resilience, empathy, and the power of quiet support than any other situation he had faced. After returning from the medical bay, they spent a long moment together in the observation garden. Lyra allowed herself a deep breath, the glow of her skin stabilizing completely for the first time in days. "You have helped me more than I imagined possible," she said, her silver eyes reflecting both the moons and her emotions. "Your presence, it is a rare gift." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm just here," he said softly. "That's all I can do. But if it helps, then I'm glad." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "It helps. Greatly, perhaps more than you understand." As the night deepened, they remained in the garden, sitting quietly and observing the peaceful surroundings. Ethan noticed the subtle serenity in Lyra's posture, the evenness of her breathing, and the gentle glow of her skin. It was clear that her cycle was moving toward completion, and that his presence had played a significant role in her stabilization. Before retreating to their quarters, Lyra spoke again, her voice soft and reflective. "Humans, you carry a strength I did not anticipate. Your patience, your empathy, it transcends species. You have reminded me that trust can flourish even in the most turbulent times." Ethan felt a deep sense of connection, a realization that this experience was not only about her cycle or his recovery, but about understanding, trust, and empathy across worlds. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I've learned a lot too." As they prepared for rest, both were aware of the bond forming between them. It was quiet, fragile, yet luminous, a connection that had grown through patience, presence, and understanding. Outside, Kalira's twin moons continued to shine, casting silver light over the station. Witnessing a trust and friendship developing between a human and a Nerai nurse, a connection that might endure far beyond the immediate challenges of her cycle. Ethan lay in his bed, reflecting on the day's events. The cycle had tested both of them, but it had also created a rare opportunity for understanding and trust. He realized that the coming days would bring more challenges, but he felt ready. Not because he had all the answers, but because he had learned the power of simply being present, of offering support, and of understanding someone beyond words. Lyra, in her own space, adjusted the environmental regulators and reflected on Ethan's unwavering presence. She had faced many difficult situations in her life, but this experience was different. The human before her was not just compassionate. He was patient, steady, and willing to remain despite uncertainty. She recognized the rarity of this trust and wondered what it might mean for the future. And so, as Kalira's moons bathed the station in gentle light, human and Nerai rested. their bond strengthened by the trials of the cycle and the quiet power of empathy. One offered steadfast presence, the other fragile trust, and together they navigated the challenges of biology, emotion, and understanding, forming a connection that transcended species and distance. The next morning, the station felt quieter than usual. Ethan woke to a soft glow filtering through the observation dome, casting gentle shadows across the room. He stretched cautiously, mindful of his recovering muscles, and noticed that Lyra was already awake, her silver eyes scanning the room as if measuring something invisible. "Good morning," Ethan said softly. She turned toward him, her expression calm but thoughtful. "Good morning, Ethan. You look well today." "I feel stronger," he admitted. "And you?" "You seem calmer," Lyra nodded. "The cycle. It is reaching its later stages. Your presence has greatly aided my balance." Ethan felt a quiet pride. The past days had been challenging for both of them, but they had learned to navigate the unpredictable effects of her cycle together. He had not only recovered from his injuries, but had also formed a deep understanding and trust with Lyra. "I'll stay with you today," he said, "until you feel completely stable." Her silver eyes softened and she allowed a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Ethan. Your willingness, it is extraordinary." The day began with light exercises in the observation gardens. Lyra guided Ethan through stretches and movements to strengthen his muscles, but now her own movements were more deliberate, controlled, and graceful. The subtle tremors and fluctuations in her glow had diminished, replaced by a steady luminescence that reflected her improved balance. "You've done remarkably well," Ethan said as he observed her. "It's like you've mastered it already." She shook her head slightly, a quiet laugh escaping her lips. "It is not mastery, only progress. I could not have done it without your patience and presence. Most beings would not endure the unpredictability of this cycle." "You did?" Ethan felt warmth in his chest. He had intended only to offer support, but Lyra's words carried a depth of gratitude and trust that surprised him. "I'm glad I could help," he said softly. "That's all I ever wanted." For the next few hours, they remained in the gardens observing the alien flora, listening to the soft hum of the station and occasionally speaking about simple things. The weather on Earth, the tides of Calera, and the beauty of the twin moons. It was a quiet, peaceful day, a stark contrast to the tension of the past days, and Ethan could see that Lyra was responding positively, her glow steady, her movements fluid. Later, they returned to the hydrotherapy pools. Lyra's immersion in the water was calmer now, less about regaining balance and more about completing the final stage of her cycle. Ethan stayed nearby, his presence silent but reassuring. He noticed the subtle rhythm of her breathing, the way the water reflected her glow in waves of silver and blue. It was mesmerizing, a visual testament to her strength and the progress she had made. "You've been remarkable," she said softly, once she had emerged from the water. "Your calmness, your patience, your understanding. Few beings could have achieved what you have. You have helped me endure this cycle in a way I did not think possible." Ethan shrugged lightly. "I only stayed." "That's all I did." "No," she said firmly, stepping closer. "It is not only staying. It is presence, attention, care, and empathy. All of these you have shown in abundance. That is rare." He looked at her, noticing the delicate glow of her skin, the subtle shine in her silver eyes, and the gentle way she carried herself. "I'm just glad I could be here," he said. "You're important. I wanted to make sure you weren't facing this alone." For a long moment they stood together, silent, letting the soft hum of the station and the light of the twin moons fill the space between them. Ethan felt a quiet sense of completion, not only in his own recovery but in the trust and understanding they had built together. In the afternoon, Thalen, the station's senior doctor, stopped by to check on both of them. He observed Lyra with a careful eye, noting the steady glow of her skin and the controlled rhythm of her breathing. "You have managed well," Thalen said. "The cycle has reached its final stages and your stability is exceptional. The human's presence has clearly contributed to your recovery and emotional equilibrium." Lyra nodded, her gaze meeting Ethan's briefly. "He has aided me greatly," she admitted. "More than I imagined possible." Ethan smiled quietly, feeling the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, though the job was simply being present, patient, and kind. As evening approached, Ethan and Lyra returned to the observation dome, The twin moons casting their silver light across the room. Lyra settled beside him near the large window, her glow steady and calm. "I owe you a great deal," she said softly, her voice almost musical in the stillness. "This cycle, it tests the very core of an Eri being, and yet you
endured, and you provided calm when I needed it most. I
will not forget this." "You don't owe me anything," Ethan said gently. "I stayed because I cared. That's all." "No," she said, shaking her head slightly. "It is more than that. You have formed a bond with me, one that transcends species instinct and circumstance. That is rare. That is significant." Ethan felt a quiet awe. He had not anticipated such depth of emotion and understanding. But he realized that Lyra's words reflected something profound. A bridge between their worlds. Built on trust, patience, and empathy, the night continued in serene silence. Ethan and Lyra spoke softly about their past experiences, their hopes, and the small joys of daily life. They shared laughter, quiet observations, and reflections on the journey they had undergone together. The bond between them had grown stronger, not through grand gestures or dramatic events, but through the consistent presence and support they had offered each other in moments of vulnerability. As sleep approached, Lyra glanced at Ethan with a small, genuine smile. "Humans, you carry a strength I did not expect. Your patience, your understanding, your calmness. It has left a mark. I am grateful." Ethan smiled back, feeling a quiet warmth in his chest. "And I'm grateful too," he said softly. "For your trust, for your guidance, and for letting me be here. It's been an extraordinary experience." For the remainder of the night, they rested in comfortable silence. Ethan reflected on the past days, the accident, the recovery, the challenge of Lyra's cycle, and the bond that had formed between them. He realized that this experience had taught him more about empathy, patience, and trust than anything he had encountered on Earth. Lyra, in her own thoughts, acknowledged the rare connection that had developed. She had endured the cycle many times before, but never with the presence of someone so steady, patient, and understanding. The human beside her had shown her a level of support that few beings could offer, and she recognized the lasting impact of this bond. As the twin moons of Kalira cast their silver light over the station, Ethan and Lyra knew that the cycle had ended successfully. The biological and emotional turbulence had passed, leaving in its place a deeper understanding and connection between two beings from vastly different worlds. In the days that followed, Ethan continued his recovery, now fully able to move and participate in the station's activities. Lyra returned to her full duties with renewed confidence and composure. Yet the bond they had forged remained, a quiet understanding and trust that transcended the simple roles of patient and nurse. They continued to share moments of quiet conversation, observation and laughter, learning from each other and growing in understanding. Ethan appreciated the depth of Lyra's wisdom and experience, while Lyra valued the patience, empathy, and steadfast presence that Ethan had shown. Together, they realized that connection, trust, and understanding could bridge the gap between species, cultures, and instincts. What had begun as a challenging situation had become an extraordinary opportunity for growth and friendship. As the twin moons set on the horizon, Ethan and Lyra stood together in the observation dome, looking out at the alien world of Kalira. The light of the moons reflected in their eyes, a symbol of the bond they had formed, a bond built on trust, patience, and empathy, one that would endure far beyond the challenges of the cycle and the recovery that had brought them together. Ethan felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had not only recovered physically, but had participated in something far greater, the forging of a connection that transcended worlds. And Lyra, standing beside him with calm composure and a gentle glow, knew that the human before her had proven the extraordinary power of presence, patience, and understanding. In the quiet stillness of Kalira, under the twin moons, human and Nerai stood side by side, ready to face the future with trust, respect, and the rare gift of shared understanding, a testament to the strength of empathy across worlds.